This is episode 5 of the Precision Tennis Pulse podcast. We've been going for 5 weeks, Patrick. How's that feel?
Super exciting.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
We've kept with it.
We have, yeah. I'm glad we're doing it. So what do we want to talk about today? We want to keep it light and maybe short. I think the hottest topic in tennis right now is the Australian Open. Just wrapped up.
Yeah.
I thought that, oh, by the way, I know I sent you that Osaka video of when she messed up the name. She actually did it the way that it was in the video.
It was a real snafu.
Yeah, she went back and said Jennifer again, and then she went on Instagram and apologized.
Oh, wow.
She was like, "I'm so sorry. Like, I could have sworn that you said Jennifer, but she said Jenny." So yeah, I thought that was hilarious.
That was like one of those moments in life. Yeah, she does seem like kind of like that kind of girl though that like makes like weird socially awkward things.
Yeah,
like without intent. Like she obviously has a very good heart, but. Yeah.
Reminds me of a Hello Kitty attitude.
Hello Kitty attitude? What do you mean by that? What's Hello Kitty attitude?
Just like light and bubbly and kind of forgetful and not paying attention to those kind of details. But at the same time, she's probably overwhelmed with emotion and all those things. It's easy to omit what you hear.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm kind of wondering if Serena's got what it takes to win another slam. She's been trying for a couple of years now to break the record for women. I think she's tied with
Margaret Court or something.
Is it Margaret Court?
I don't know. Margaret Court did some ridiculous stuff too.
Yeah, but Steffi Graf had I think 24 slams singles. We're talking single slams here, right?
Yeah, right.
I think she needs one more to break the record, which would be a pretty cool feat. But what I thought was really interesting is I saw her name in the conversation for the GOAT of all GOATs. So as soon as Brady won that Super Bowl, they were comparing across all sports who's the greatest GOAT of all GOATs.
Yeah.
And it was Tom Brady, I believe LeBron James, and then Serena Williams. Those were the 3 people that they were talking about.
So Margaret Court has 24.
24.
Serena Williams has 23. Steffi Graf has 22.
That's bullshit.
Chris Evert 18. Navratilova 18 as well. So she's actually one behind Margaret Court. That's what's keeping her going, trying.
Well, I know Margaret Court's been in the news in recent years about some sensitive topics, and her name got removed from the Australian court.
She get cancelled? Did Margaret Court get cancelled?
Well, they had a court named after her at the Australian Open.
Yes.
And then they changed the name.
Margaret Court Arena, I think it was called.
Yeah. Because she was talking about some...
Although the last name is Court, so it could have just been Margaret Court.
Maybe. I remember reading about her in the news. She made some comments about, I don't know if it was like racist comments or very, I guess, social sensitive comments.
She posted something wrong on Twitter back in 1968.
Maybe.
Yeah.
No, this was like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, she's 78 years old. I mean, by the point you're 78, if you're saying racist stuff, I would just blame dementia. I would cancel the person.
Yeah, maybe.
That's...
Well, I just, I read that a German got deported from the U.S., a 98-year-old German. I know this has nothing to do with tennis, but I thought it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, today I think we're just going to freestyle it.
Yeah.
We don't have a real topic. I mean, we're just freestyling, so yeah, go ahead.
But they found out that this German guy that he was in a Nazi guard, and they found out that he was a Nazi guard of a concentration camp, and a judge ruled that it's no excuse for what he did, and that the U.S. isn't going to support any kind of acts that were, part of the Nazi regime. So they deported a 98-year-old gentleman living, I forget where in the States. I think it was like somewhere in the middle of the States, like Wisconsin's not in the middle. Anyway, somewhere from the States, and they deported him, and he's been living there for 75 years. And he left, like he was a Nazi guard when he was 19, and then ended up in the States and started a family. He was some kind of laborer, I forget what kind. And then recently a judge ruled that you can get deported for your crimes, or not crimes, but for being a Nazi.
Yeah.
And I guess they found evidence that he was a Nazi, and they found pictures, and they sent him back. So
was that like Demjanjuk?
I don't know.
Is that what you were talking about? I mean, there was a whole documentary about. I think it was called The Devil Next Door.
No, I don't think it was that.
And it was about like how there was a guy named Ivan the Terrible or something.
No.
But basically they found some guy living in like Illinois or something, and he bore a resemblance to like the worst Nazi guard of all time, like the most sadistic. And they like filed a lawsuit against him and everything, and he was living in the States, right? And they were trying to get him out. Yeah, there's a whole Netflix documentary about it.
This guy.
Okay, yeah.
So he lived in Tennessee and he was deported.
Yeah. Well, here's an interesting thing about the topic of Nazis now on a tennis podcast. But they say that the longer people talk, the more the chance becomes that they talk about Nazis and Hitler.
Really?
There's like a rule about it. Yeah. But anyway, like Operation Paperclip?
No.
So this was a operation after the war to basically bring in some of the smartest minds amongst the Nazi elite.
Okay.
And like academics. So they basically employed a bunch of German Nazis in American institutions and gave them like asylum essentially.
Oh, interesting.
Right after the war. Yeah, it was very secretive and everything, but yeah, they did that because just to siphon off the brain power. Like they looked past the horror that was there.
For the greater good.
For the greater good, yeah. That's
so knowledge is power.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's a big truth to that.
Yeah.
It's definitely a big truth to that.
For sure.
But I don't know. Before we actually started recording, we were kind of reminiscing a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It was nice. We kind of share a bit of competitive history. Patrick's a couple years older than I am, but he lived in Ontario, and I played a fair few tournaments that featured players that Patrick knows.
Yeah.
So we kind of know a few people there, and we were kind of just thinking about tournament play, I guess, as well. And one of our topics we had was what's important at a tournament, or just,
You mean playing a tournament or the organization?
They talk about being match tough.
Yeah, something I'm not lately.
Well, yeah, neither of us would be at this point. But, what does that mean? Maybe we can talk a bit about that. What does
it mean to be match tough?
Yeah, but how can we break that down? What is it? What do you gain? Like, what is that X factor, I guess you'd call it, right? They talk about, like, when they're commentating on, like, this guy, he's got the X factor, or he's got the intangibles. And
yeah.
It's hard to define, right?
I mean...
But you see it in, like, Djokovic, for example.
Yeah, it just comes down to the mental game and your mental resolve playing at whatever level you're at. But it's handling pressure, essentially.
Yeah.
And I've noticed... I've taken a lot of time off playing tournaments, and when I'm in a pressure situation, it's foreign to me, and I can really feel the nervousness or the tentativeness of my body, and it's almost like side effects of pressure, and it's where.
Are you talking about like in life?
No,
or
on the tennis court. On the
okay.
tennis court,
Yeah.
just I'll get the shaky hands now. At a 30-40 situation in a service game,
Yeah.
But to be fair, my sample size of tournaments since coming back from injury is very small. I've only played about 3 tournaments, and only one of them I felt fully fit to actually be playing a tournament. But even though I felt great this last tournament that I played physically, I was strong. My shots were great. I was, in decent enough shape to compete with these open players. But mentally, I was so far gone. It was incredible. And, I just let a second round match slip away from me very easily where I was in control in the first set and then kind of had a lull similar to what I would describe happened to Medvedev. He was obviously a little nervous at first, dropped the first couple games, but he gathered himself, got the break back, and it was a tight first set. I think he let it slip a little bit at the end there, and that kind of swung things back in Djokovic's favor. But I can draw a lot of comparisons to that. And it's that roller coaster that you go through when you're playing in a match. It's
Yeah, watching Medvedev, I stayed up and watched the final as you did yourself, and it was pretty actually disappointing to watch in the end. Definitely. Because all the matches prior to that one, I would have said, Medvedev is very mentally strong, and from what I saw, kind of this warrior fighter spirit. And whether it was Medvedev just fell apart on his own accord, or Djokovic was just so tough that he broke him down, what do you think happened there? I mean, I think it was maybe a combination of the two, but
possibly a combination. I think he kind of just gave up near the end.
Yeah.
I was seeing some of those serves he was
second
hitting.
serves he was hitting super hard. Yeah.
But a few of the second serves hit the middle of the net or almost went out past the baseline. So at the professional level, when you see that, it kind of looks like he threw
even
in the
at
towel.
deuce he did that. So there was a few games where he was serving at deuce, and second serve I think he just went for a down a down the tee freaking ace on second serve. Yeah. That's bad decision making at that point, unless you've already been playing confidently. Sampras used to go for second serve aces when he was feeling it. Just to make a statement. But in his case, it was just that giving up feeling.
That's what it looked like. But put yourself in his shoes for a second. I feel like that was just everything just happening so quickly, and you just don't even realize what's happening. And then after, probably during his speech where he reflected, he was apologized to the crowd. Sorry, I couldn't, fight more. And I think in the moment,
it's so easy watching that happen and being oh, he could have done better. He should have done better. Exactly. But I can say I've acted pretty much just like him. I think the thing is, I think eventually I did stop acting as bad as he did in the final. So it was still disappointing to see just how often he would turn to the box like a kid and put his hands out, and say what can I do? It was like a 6-year-old losing at a video game or something.
Yeah, he's looking for answers.
He's looking for that comfort from the box, but also kind of communicating. Because I remember that feeling. It's you want. What is that feeling? Because my dad used to watch me play, right? And
just
if I was
looking for a lifeline, I think.
Yeah, but you can't in tennis. There's such a disconnect, right? Because you can't. Because the person watching you can't even signal anything to help you. The best they can do is tell you to calm down, or
leave,
or move your feet. They can go this with their hands, or they can leave. So my dad used to leave, which used to drive me insane because he smokes. And I knew if he was leaving, that usually meant that he was going to go smoke. Mm-hmm. So it was I was inadvertently causing him to smoke more. So I put it on myself, I think.
Papa, no.
Yeah, but he had to leave because after every point I lost, I would just look to him and it's you're looking for
answers.
You feel pathetic, right? So you're you almost want validation that you're pathetic. you want the person to see. I don't know. It's a weird thing to describe. That, just wanting to make eye contact with somebody.
Yeah. It's almost like you're looking for sympathy.
Sympathy, yes, but there's a self-destructive element to it. It's you're looking to someone see how badly I'm self-destructing here or something. Watch me self-destruct, and there's something about it that, like what Medvedev was doing yesterday. Like he wasn't even doing it always after he made a bad shot. It was also like Djokovic would hit, as he often does when he's down, 15-30 or 30-40, he would hit a huge serve on the,
Yeah.
like
So Djokovic actually served really big that match.
pretty much every point that he was in trouble, he served a big serve. And it's like, as a player, yourself, you can't do much about, you can't do much about the fact that your opponent served well. You just say good shot and you move on to the next point. Like, there's not much you can do. I mean, maybe you could have guessed more. Like, you could have moved. He could have guessed on which way the serve was going. But ultimately, if the guy hits an ace, like, there's really no reason except to say, like, to your box, look at my plight. Like, look at how badly, like, what do I do with this situation? And it's an interesting moment. But so it was really jarring to see that at such a high level, because he did it like almost every point after a certain point.
Well, the what I noticed is he did it for too long of periods. Right, it happens in matches. We have our lulls. I even saw Djokovic a few times. He looked like he wanted
did in the
to
same
smash.
match.
Yeah,
in the same match.
He looked like he wanted to smash his racket.
But he did it once.
Exactly.
Medvedev did it like 30 times.
Exactly. He
He
looked a little dejected for a moment and then gathered himself, and that's what champions do. I mean, we're all human. We're not gonna be able to be at our best for 4 or 5 hours on end, but a champion can be aware of them slipping and gather themselves and reset themselves. And what I found was interesting. The commentators were talking about Medvedev is they were talking about, well, he starts playing fast when he's losing it, but he also starts playing fast when he's in the zone too. So for him,
he does do that. Yeah,
it was trying to find that balance, and almost he's going.
It almost worked for him a couple times, even in this match, because
exactly.
He kind of almost rushed his way back into the match,
right.
Like score wise, but yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah. So, and another thing I noticed is you have those moments where, okay, you're down and you go for broke, but like I was kind of saying from before, he did it for too long of period of times where it just wasn't working, and at that point it was too late. I remember a great semi-final between Djokovic and Federer, and Federer was just doing really, really well. I forget at what point in the match. It could have been in the 5th set or even in the 4th set, but Federer was winning, looked like he was going to have another routine US Open win.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember Djokovic was down a break, and maybe not a break, but Federer was serving at 15-40, and it was basically, if Federer won that game, he would have been pretty close to winning the match. And all I remember is Djokovic just went and just completely dejected, just went for the hardest forehand he can possibly hit, and it went in, just ripped a complete winner, and that changed that match around completely. Federer was kind of stunned. He ended up getting broken that game because at the 30-40 point, he was just kind of shocked. I think he did a couple
forehands too. It wasn't just
he
one.
went for a few. Okay, true.
Yeah.
But that little short period of time turned that whole match around. And I think if it worked, it turned that around. And again, it's tough to compare those situations because it's Federer and someone else. But I feel like he had that moment, and then he brought himself back to his normal game, and then continued, using that momentum to go forward. Whereas, what I kind of noticed with Medvedev, maybe it worked for 1 or 2 points, and then he kept trying to go for broke when it wasn't working as well.
There's a lack of belief in the end.
Possibly.
Definitely. I think that's what it probably was.
And what was fascinating too is they were comparing, how much court time they were playing, and Djokovic basically played a full match longer than Medvedev. So physically, you'd think Medvedev was fresher. He's younger. Yeah, he's a little bit taller, so maybe that weighs a little bit more on the body, but he's not that much taller than Djokovic. And it's very interesting how much the mind can affect the body.
Yeah, there was at one point in the match they showed Djokovic like meditating on the changeover.
Mm-hmm.
His eyes were closed and he was like breathing out, you know. So that was a good show of difference. And then Medvedev was just sitting there like shaking his head, you know. So it was like a total showing of how much the mental game matters, especially at that level. I mean, it's important at any level, but especially at that level, things can turn so quickly.
For sure. And the devil's in the details there. I mean, I remember growing up and people kind of make fun of those small little details, like, oh, someone has a little notepad at practice, or you know, someone, like I said, just takes time to visualize what they're trying to do, and we would kind of look at it like, oh, that's weird, like, why would you do that?
So I had the weirdest match preparations, like the nationals that I won, it was the best that I prepared for matches. And the way I prepared for matches, I would just sit and stare like at a spot. Like I would just space out. Like I wouldn't do anything. So there was a coach there, I think, traveling with us, and he was saying like, you know, go and do some skipping rope or like run around or stretch, like a typical thing. But what worked best for me was just to completely zen out before a match. Mm-hmm. And then like I'd warm up a little more actively during the actual warm up period. And it just never worked for me to have that like typical warm up session. You know, maybe if I kept going in like the pros, I probably would have developed at least something, right? Because you don't want to get injured, right? Yeah. Luckily, that was when I was younger. Maybe less chance of injury when you're younger. Like the body's a bit more nimble. But yeah, I just really that really stuck with me. It's like, well, that worked for me. You know, that's what worked for me. Yeah. All this stuff you guys told me didn't really do much. Like,
yeah, it goes to show that everyone's different.
Like I'd be too amped up sometimes. So like if I did do like a physical warm up, I'd be too amped up. I had to strike this. They talk about, you know, energy level, right?
Yeah.
I remember that was like one of the things in the course too. They talk about that, right? Like psychologically, how do you deal with a player's psychology?
Well, you don't want your levels to be going up and down. You want your level to remain consistent.
Yeah, at the level that you should be at. So some people need to be at that really high intensity to play their best, right? Some players need to be way down to play their best.
Yeah.
If you don't remember that guy Tursunov, he never reacted to a single point. Like he went a big point and just walked to that other side. Like
I remember his coach. I worked with his coach Daru, crazy Romanian guy. But yeah, I remember that guy was a head case, right? Tursunov.
I don't know where he's at now, but he
was. I remember.
Yeah, but he just wouldn't react. Miss or no miss, he would just. I mean, this was like I didn't watch him that much, but.
So you're saying on court, because I didn't see him
on
play
court,
that. On court, he was super calm.
Just like stoic.
Okay. Yeah.
No reaction.
Because the stories I would hear about him, he was whacked up.
Yeah, well.
But again, that's kind of this is polar opposites.
I am basing this off a small sample size. I think I watched him play the Davis Cup at one point, and but like every so often you see those guys, like they don't really like react much, one way or the other.
Yeah.
Even Medvedev doesn't react much, for example, to whether like if he wins a point, like he does a little bit, like a little fist pump. But like Djokovic is way more intense, like when he does.
Yeah, he's a little more animated.
Animated, yeah. There you
go. But I noticed that trend is starting to go away. Those kind of theatrics, and in my mind, I think it's to conserve energy. I mean, at tennis at the highest level now, every ounce of energy counts. And if you're going to be spending it getting angry at yourself and spending that extra energy throwing rackets and yelling at the umpire, yelling at yourself, you're burning a lot of extra calories, burning a lot of extra energy that could be used for tennis. Now, that being said, I mean, maybe it worked for someone like McEnroe, but the landscape of the game was completely different back then. And that's, gamesmanship, I think, made a bigger difference back then than it does now.
Yeah, it's crazy to see also how much sliding there is on hard court now too.
That's true.
I think that has gone up.
Oh, so much.
Like almost every point you see those slides out to get those balls, those sliced kind of squash shots.
Yeah.
Almost every point you watch that's like a long point, you see that squash shot now. Would you agree? Like
depends on the player. Like
I'm not saying every point. I'm saying like, but it's increased like the amount that those shots are played.
Depends on the player, because I don't think I noticed Medvedev slide at all. Like, he would just still try to rip that backhand, even if it was completely.
Well, Djokovic for sure slides crazy.
Oh,
right?
100%.
And I swear I saw Medvedev.
Nadal definitely slides.
Hardcore,
Federer
yeah.
for sure. But
but
I think those bigger guys, I think they try to avoid sliding, so I don't think it's great for their.
But they're
their
so
knees.
good now at getting those squash shots and those balls out like that are hit to them really wide. Just being far back in the court and getting those balls back deep, like, and neutralizing the rally, like. Because this is the most I've watched tennis, like over this past couple of weeks. You know, I got a VPN and I watched a bunch of the Australian Open. I honestly I haven't watched that much tennis. Like while I was playing, I didn't watch much tennis. Like I would watch like only maybe the finals or like highlights or whatever.
Yeah, same.
But recently, I'm like, oh well, not much going on anyway, and you know, sitting at home a lot, and yeah, I just watched a bunch of matches, and that's one thing that struck me about the modern game is just how important the defense is now. Because the attack is like everyone's pretty much on the same page as far as the attack goes. It's almost like who defends better, who's able to defend when they're returning serve better to get those chances to serve, right?
Well, I think it.
And like consolidate the break after, right?
I agree, but I also think a great point, it was either Pat or John McEnroe said during the final is if you're not spending too much time on your own service game, then you're going to have more energy to spend on your return game and your defending game, right?
Yeah.
Which makes sense. If your attacking is crisp and you're putting balls away quickly, then you can focus much more on defense. And I mean, that's not someone like Nadal, I would say, per se, but that's kind of what a style like Federer you would see. You know, he's so efficient with his attack that it allows him to focus on his defense a little bit more.
Yeah. What do you think about Federer? He's 39. He's coming back.
Yeah, I think he's gonna win Wimbledon this year.
Do you think that's his plan? Win one more Wimbledon, and then call it quits or something?
I think he's gonna keep going and until he's not winning matches
he's not making
anymore.
quarters or something.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like he's a lifer, but I think he's got one more slam in him. Especially with all the time he's taken up, he's gonna be fresh.
Yeah.
And I don't think he'll be coming back for the French Open, but
It'd be nice to see him, like, if he does retire, to go out like Pete Sampras did.
yeah,
Like, because Pete Sampras went out in such a poetic way, right? Because he won the US Open and then he dropped the mic. like Federer deserves that kind of exit, you know?
he does.
He doesn't deserve to just, like, fade out to obscurity, sort of.
Kind of like Connors did a little bit.
Like, that'd be sad. Like if he kept going, like, yes, he loves tennis and all that, but he had such an amazing career. You know, he's got to go out with, like, a bang. Like, that would be the way for him to go. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just, like, I like the poetic, like, dramatic stuff, right? So he, that would be good to see.
Yeah, I mean, anything can happen. I definitely do think he has one more slam in him, but I think he can only do it on grass. Potentially, if a slam was moved indoors, a hardcourt slam, but I don't think he's winning the U.S. Open. Possibly the Australian Open. I heard the surface is really fast this year, but he needs a quick surface to do well. I believe it, at least.
Yeah, but you can feel it, like, Nadal and Federer might be kind of slowing down a bit, but Djokovic is still pushing.
Yeah.
And he's, like, at the top of his game right now.
Yeah, so he's only 2 behind now too, right?
So it's... I wonder how much of a mental game that plays on Federer and Nadal, too. Like, yes, I mean, it's like, well, they've combined, they're like at almost 60 freaking Grand Slams. Like, they're doing fine mentally. I mean, they're pretty happy, but you gotta, you know, for men, it's really important to be like the top dog. right?
Yeah,
So
I mean, for them, their whole career is going to come down to that last year. Could I have pushed for that one more slam to have that
they
legacy?
don't have regrets.
Exactly.
So that's their mental challenge. Like
For sure. I mean, they don't need to play anymore. They can
Yeah.
they can retire, and I think at this point they're just playing for pride.
There's no more money involved. There's no more chasing.
They don't got to pay the bills.
Chasing that part of it. It's just all like pride and glory.
Yeah.
And not having to wonder whether they had more in them, and it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next couple years, I guess.
Yeah.
Looks like slams are back on. I think Wimbledon will happen this year, right?
I'm not sure. I don't.
Wimbledon's the only Grand Slam that took out pandemic insurance. You heard about that, right?
Yeah.
So they actually didn't lose money. They made money.
I know.
They made some like ridiculous amount of money too.
Yeah.
So they were pretty smart. And then the Australian Open lost what, 72 million or something, you said?
78 million.
$78 million.
Yeah. It's
But they
wild.
still had it. So like all the slams are losing so like that much money, I guess. Wow.
Well, I think they lost because they had 5 days that they couldn't have fans because of COVID.
Yeah.
So I mean,
remember
probably didn't. It made a decent difference, but just they lost so much money from revenue and fans coming in and concessions. I'm sure too, right?
Yeah. I mean, I hear now that like here in Canada, people our age should be vaccinated by June.
Okay.
At least our first dose or whatever.
Mhm.
Just statistically speaking, it used to be thought of as September, but it should be closer to June now, as long as everything goes as planned. I mean,
True.
it's still an uncertain situation, but yeah, that'll be good. Hopefully, this time next year things are like legitimately back to normal.
We'll
That'd
see.
be nice.
That would be nice.
I wonder how that'll feel though. It's gonna be so long that it almost will forget what it feels like to have things be normal. Like it'll take time to.
It won't be normal. It'll be a new
I guess
normal,
so.
right?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think things will ever go back to the same.
Like
they
you even
were.
watch like old like tennis tournaments and you see how often people would get like really close to each other, like hug each other, or even like things like shaking hands. Like you're watching that and it can be a bit like weird to see that. It's like, oh, that's how life used to be. Like it didn't feel weird at all to do that, right?
I remember I saw a couple handshakes at the Australian. Like
Yeah.
some of them were fist bumps, some of them actually grabbed
Most
hands.
of the time I saw real handshakes. Yeah,
Yeah.
the players to players, they don't really care. They
I
just.
think now, I mean, the protocols are so strict that you have to be negative to even, be in the hotel or be in
Yeah.
be competing.
Exactly. So they're probably. Yeah,
But, I remember at the beginning it was only racket taps, right? The
Yeah, I
first
remember
couple
that, yeah.
tournaments.
Yeah.
U.S. Open, it was all just racket taps, right?
Yep.
It
No
was fun.
shaking the umpire's hand or
Yeah.
anything.
Thing about the U.S. Open too is Djokovic got defaulted from there,
Yeah.
and he was looking pretty primed to win that tournament too. So.
Yep.
It's mentally what a great comeback from that is, because that's something that can send you down a pretty dark path. Being someone favored to win a tournament and then getting disqualified. I think
Yep.
he did a great job coming back, and it was probably a big hit to the ego losing right away in the French Open final. He got routed by Nadal pretty badly.
Yep.
and he just didn't let it deter him. He lost in the tour finals too. He lost to Medvedev actually.
Yeah.
And now he just turned it around. Fresh year, new year, put it all behind him.
He
came
won
back
it.
and won.
He won when it counted. Yeah.
Exactly.
Like
So,
I think that's what came down to. Medvedev just didn't handle the occasion well at all.
Yeah.
So that's for him to figure out. But I mean, definitely after watching that, it's like, well, now it's his turn to show, is he really the real deal?
Yeah.
Or is he just going to fade out into like this, two-time finalist kind of
Yeah.
scenario, which you see fairly.
Hey, like a Joe.
Like you forget
Joe
about those
Wilfried
people,
Tsonga,
though.
right?
Right? You can't like name me the last person.
Baghdadis.
Yeah, Baghdadis. Yeah, okay. I remember Baghdadis, but like,
Tsonga.
see, yeah, Tsonga. Okay, yeah, that took a little longer than Baghdadis.
Nalbandian.
Baghdadis was a character. He was fun to watch.
Yeah.
Tonga was okay too. Yeah, he was kind of a character too.
I think there was this guy Magnus Norman who made a
Norman,
couple
yeah, I
finals
remember Norman.
and then
Yeah.
faded away.
Norman, yeah. Oh, what's that guy's name? Johansson.
Johansson.
Joachim Johansson.
Joachim, okay.
Big server.
I was thinking of Thomas.
The Flying
Johansson.
Finn.
I think Thomas Johansson won.
Thomas Johansson was the shorter
and he won the
counter
Australian.
puncher kind of guy.
Yeah, and he had like a heart problem or something. Or I
I'm
think
not
that was
sure.
Magnus. I think one of them had heart surgery.
Yeah, but it's not how you want to go. Like, you don't want to be a finalist, you know. You want to win the thing. So it's like, does Medvedev have it? And it's like, man, he showed the fight against Nadal in the other final.
Yeah,
And it's like it's like he got worse at handling the situation. How did that happen? You know, how does that happen?
I don't know, different player. You know, maybe Djokovic broke him down more, or the presence of him. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe he thought Djokovic was still injured.
Almost makes you wonder about the coach that Medvedev has too. Has it been the same coach all throughout? Did he have a different coach when he
I have no
played the
idea.
Nadal final? Because it seems like he's signaling a lot of time to the coach. And it's like, maybe there's something there where, you know, there's some kind of tension, or, well, I guess we'll see. Like if he switches coaches or something, but
Yeah, for sure.
it doesn't seem like a healthy thing to keep going. Where it's like a habit for him to look to his box. I mean, they used to tell me, like coaches used to tell me, don't look at your dad at all. You know, like just play your match, and like you generally don't want to look at your box.
You shouldn't be looking at anything but what's going on in
Yeah.
the court.
I mean, maybe if you're celebrating, that's good. But
Maybe.
like, definitely not after a negative result and looking to the box for sympathy or anything.
But
Like,
I remember I was told, don't even look at the person playing next to you. Because sometimes I'd have friends playing on the other courts, right? And I'm kind of just watching
Yeah.
And I'll start losing my focus. And I'm like, no, just focus on your match because you're the one
I found
playing
that
it.
so difficult. That was really difficult. But that is how you focus.
Yeah,
That's what I tell students. Yeah, the only court that exists is this one. No one else exists.
Yeah, especially on changeovers, it's easy to just look across the
Yeah.
field and seeing, even if it's not your friends, or you're just curious of like, oh, if this person wins, maybe and I win, maybe then we'll play each other, and a lot of things can start going through your mind.
That's why it was so impactful to see Djokovic like sitting on a changeover with his eyes closed, just like breathing slowly.
See, keeps going.
Yeah. But just to see that Djokovic, you know, sitting and breathing slowly like that, meditating, it's like, just imagine the enormity of sound and the atmosphere around him and the situation, and like, you know, I wonder what's going through his mind, right? It's like,
But those are the details. Those are the details that are making the difference. I think Medvedev right now against Sampras probably would have beat him. Or even, I hate to say Agassi because he's my favorite, but you know, against those guys, that generational gap where they weren't doing those small little things, right? I think that makes a big difference. You know, physically, you can make that argument that, you know, the next generation's a little bit stronger. You can make the technology argument as well, but I think the commitment to gain every inch and doing, you know, all these new different types of training, whether it's mental training or physical training or technique training, tactical training, you know, it's advanced a lot.
Yeah.
Within the last couple of generations. And you know, for me, I see three big generations. It's the John McEnroe era, you know, Borg, McEnroe, Connors. Then you have, you know, the Agassi, Becker, Sampras era, and then you have the Federer, Nadal, Djokovic era. And I think the quality of this generation is better than the previous one, but so much better than the 80s, right? And it's just fascinating to see. And I think it's developed in all sports. I mean, I remember guys like Mario Lemieux, you know, in hockey, you'd hear stories about them all smoking cigars and smoking cigarettes in the change rooms, you know, and they're NHL professional players. Now, if something like that would happen.
I heard David Ferrer like drank and smoked like a.
Yeah, I heard that too. I heard he smoked like a pack a day. And apparently, Daniel Nestor smoked all the time too.
Yeah.
But you know, now the players that are willing to just be completely pure, and they're seeing that it's making a difference. Why not, right?
Yeah.
And they're willing to do that. And it's walking that fine line of how much do you want to enjoy your life? And I'm not saying smoking cigarettes and drinking is enjoying life, but, you know, how much do you want to commit to being a champion? You know, how much do you want to sacrifice?
It's a probability game. Like, okay, yes, I could enjoy a drink, but more likely than not, it's going to lead to maybe a few more lazier days, you know? And I'd rather, for example, in my own life, I'd rather give myself an opportunity to have the energy and, you know, not have those days after drinking.
For sure. But someone like Djokovic, I read in his autobiography or one of his articles about him, is he would resist having chocolate for so long because it affected him in a way.
Yeah.
Right. And it didn't allow him to train at full capacity. And one of his things, you know, whatever I was reading, whether it was an article or his autobiography, you know, as a treat after he won the US Open 1 year, he allowed himself one little square of chocolate. And he said, I just savored it and let it melt in my mouth. And it was, you know, that was my treat. And I'm just like, wow. Like, for me, after winning the US Open, I'd be on an island, like, partying on a beach for about a week.
But that's exactly it. Since that's where you're at, you're not Djokovic. Maybe. Because, like, I'm with you on that one. Like, but you don't get there by thinking like that. Yeah. You gotta just stick to your thing.
Nothing, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, on that motivating tone, I think we'll end this today. It was a bit of a freestyle today, and maybe we'll do something a little more structured next time.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks. See you on the courts.